We launched it and the thing just started flying right from the beginning. And people are like, what the hell is this? What's going on? This is cool. What is this? So now why am I doing all this? Why am I grinding so hard? It's about self-fulfillment. It's about winning again. But it's a lot more than just making money. If you had a bunch of money in a bank account over there, what would you do? So that's what you should be doing.
All right, guys, welcome back to Built America. We have John Gagliardi here, who's the founder and CEO of Kane, one of the coolest footwear brands out there today. John, great to have you here.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me.
John, you are a lacrosse U.S. national team player. Now you built this awesome footwear brand that we see behind you today. Tell us about how Kane started. A little about your background.
Yeah, so I grew up in the footwear space. My father owned a sneaker store in Queens, New York. And I used to work there starting at like 6 years old. I used to go in the summers, go help them out, help customers out. It's a very diverse area near JFK, and we had awesome people come from all different, backgrounds. And so I loved being around sneakers. I was around sneakers my whole life. My family had that store for 35 years. And then after college, I went, we lived in Brooklyn, then we moved to Long Island to a place called Manhasset. Lacrosse was really big there. Lacrosse is very big on Long Island. I started playing and I got some opportunities to play at the next level in college. I played at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And after that, I played professionally for 10 years and I played on the USA team. And I played a ton of lacrosse. I was sponsored by another brand. And then eventually I want to start my own brand. So I started a company called Maverick Lacrosse and we made all the equipment from head to toe. And I eventually sold that to Bauer Hockey and started working with them and helping them with their acquisitions. And that was a lot of fun. So I got to see, I got to learn how to develop product in Asia. I learned everything from importing to, brand development to, everything about every aspect of the business. After I sold it, I've been helping Bauer out, but I wanted to create another brand. And I love footwear, going back to my original roots. And, I like Crocs. I had nothing against Crocs and they make a, decent EVA shoe. I just thought, I saw a lot of athletes wearing them. I thought we could create a better shoe. So I hired a podiatrist, Dr. Geller out of LA. He's a top podiatrist. We worked with NBA players, ultra marathoners. I hired a developer. And I hired a designer that had some great footwear experience. So we just started working on designing the shoe, the Revive, which was our first shoe. And after like a year and a half, 2 years, I also wanted to make it in a more responsible way. I wanted to be 1%. I wanted to be a B Corp from the beginning. I just started to learn about B Corps and 1% for the planet. And so I want to start making out of materials that were potentially renewable. So we were able to find sugar cane down in Brazil. And that's where the name Kane comes from sugar cane. And we're able to, at the end of life, we're able to use the shoes and make them into yoga mats, make them into stretching mats and different things where, we had a good end of life story for the brand. It wasn't just thrown with these landfills. And so, I wanted to create a better, EVA shoe made out of sustainable materials. To do that, I learned, there's a 2-piece mold. We had to, play with the densities, the firmness of the shoe. The base is a little bit firmer than our upper. You don't want it to be too soft, the shoe, where you're walking in sand. You want to. So this is all the stuff we learned from working with a podiatrist, Dr. Geller. And so we started designing it. We launched it 3.5 years ago, direct to consumer, June 15, 2021. And the thing just started flying right from the beginning. And we launched it at actually an event in Miami at the HPLT, a Brian Mazza event.
Oh, yeah.
We introduced it there. And people are like, what the hell is this? What's going on? This is cool. What is this? And so like 40, 50 people got it, guys and girls got it that week. And then we launched like a week later. And we had started making some creative from that event. And it just was it was the first time introducing the brand to people. and telling them about the product. And it was just a great launching pad, great opportunity. And we had other events right after it that we lined up, and we just started introducing the brand to a bunch of athletes. And so that's the gist of it.
Yeah, I mean, lots to unpack there. Actually, just Brian Mazza just actually sold his gym to Lifetime. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, what a cool story also, because obviously you have a lacrosse background, so you've been through, all the different footwears out there. I played soccer my entire life. Actually, I ruptured my plantar fasciitis, went through that entire process. Not an easy recovery whatsoever. And the one thing I realized is that there's a lot of athletic performance enhancing shoes, but there isn't a lot of recovery shoes out there. And you chose this sub niche of a category of a shoe that helps you recover, right? And to the athletes out there who are playing the NFL and the NBA, there's almost like a delta in the marketplace today. And what did you see in the marketplace with Kane that no one else saw?
I mean, I've been in NFL locker rooms, NBA locker rooms, NHL locker rooms, college locker rooms, and I saw what people were wearing after they played, coming out of cleats, practices, basketball, and they're throwing a lot of slides on. To be honest, they're throwing slides on, and so I knew like there had to be a better product for them when they're entering, cold plunges, saunas, just walking around, going to get a smoothie or going to the Whole Foods after, going to get lunch. So then we started talking to Dr. Geller, and capturing the heel is a big part of this. We capture your heel, so your heel's not flipping out of it, and that takes off stress from your Achilles and your calves, and that's what a lot of people in sports gravitate towards, capturing the heel and elevated heel to toe. I just thought I saw what was going on. It's been going on for the last 50, 60 years. Everyone wears slides in every sport. We just thought we could create a better product, and we worked on it for like 2 years, and it's been great so far. We work with over 25 NFL teams now and NBA teams, and it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I just saw that there was an opportunity in that space to put a shoe on athletes after they work out, after they are in cleats and ice skates and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think you're solving a massive need. I see. I was one of those athletes as well that just wore slides after a game. If you have really flat feet, the impact that does to your overall body. And all these cleats today, you don't have much on them whatsoever when you're putting all this duress onto your plantar fascia, your Achilles, and even your joints in general as well. What I'd be curious to ask you today, and I think the audience would love to know, is what are some of the massive challenges that you probably saw in the development of multiple different iterations? How many iterations do you go through with Kane to then understand that, hey, we validated this as a footwear that actually has data behind it, that this works for recovery?
Yeah. Our initial designs, like I actually was looking at them this weekend, and I mean, from where we started to the rounds of design, like tweaks and adjustments. And I mean, it takes time. You can't get the design right the first time. Everyone designed a product, it takes multiple changes and tweaks and adjustments. And then you got to go with your gut. I'm like, oh, this looks really good. I think men and women would like this. And you also it's got to be different than what's out there as well. So, and I showed a few people, but I didn't show a ton of people before we launched it because I didn't want to get influenced too much. I read the book, with Steve Jobs. Like, people don't know what they want until you show them. And, you have to like surprise them a little. You can't go on everyone's feedback, because especially something they've never seen before, because then they're just going to try to bring it back to what's probably they're used to seeing. So I just went mostly off my gut, and I showed a few people, and the reaction was awesome from the beginning. I actually showed a well-known musician, Quavo, before and he saw it, and he was like, "Holy crap!" So I started showing different types of people, not just athletes. And I saw the reactions. It was like, cool, man. We got something cool here. It looks good. Because I think you have to look good too for people to buy it.
John, I'm looking at all the shoes behind you right now. Tell me why you put, small holes behind the shoes. What's the rationale behind that? Tell us some key features that would identify what Kane does today. that nobody would know unless they're looking at the shoe?
I didn't know a lot of this, by the way, until, so I get your feet when they're in cleats, when they're in skates, they're in basketball shoes, they swell up a little bit when you're running a lot, when you're moving a lot, your feet enlarge a little bit. So you want them to breathe after. This is all Dr. Geller's findings. You want them to breathe. You want your feet to come back to their normal size. They only expand a little bit. So the holes are about letting your feet breathe. That's that was so you could be active recovery. You could be active, letting your feet breathe while you're being active after a practice, after training, going to the market, walking your dog, whatever you're doing. So that's the holes. We have nodes on the bottom of the shoe. I don't know if you can see that, where you step on the nodes, stimulates blood flow. These are little nodes that stimulate blood flow. You probably see it better with the white shoe, but you see there's little nodes in there. We have an elevated heel, like we said, 10 millimeter drop, taking pressure off your Achilles and your calves. We have two dual density. So like I said, it's a little firmer on the base, a little softer up top. You don't want it to be too soft where your feet are doing a ton of work. And we capture the heel. Which is really big, which you're not flipping out of your sandals and or your slides. So those are the big things we did. And being a two-piece mold allows us to play a lot of different games and play around with the densities and stuff like that.
That's awesome, man. I think you're onto something here, obviously, with having a recovery shoe that's second to none. And we all know that building a product like this is not easy. Building a company like this is not easy. You've obviously done this once before. You have grit. You're an athlete. You've played this high stakes competitions. But now building a company at this scale, which I'm sure you're trying to get critical mass at, is going to be somewhat of a large task. And I know you probably had to go maybe potentially raise some money to do this, build a fantastic team. When you first started this 4 years ago, what were some of the critical pieces to get started? Did you raise any money? How did you get going?
So yeah, whenever, and this is like third or fourth startup I've been highly involved in. So everyone has strengths and weaknesses. My strengths are more on the front facing sales, marketing, product side. My weaknesses would be on the operational side of the business. So what I did, first thing I did was hire the people where areas that needed a lot of focus that I don't love doing. That's finance, that's operations. So I hired, someone to take care of all the finances and build out the plans, as well as an ops person who, making sure everything gets from Brazil to America to our 3PL in Indianapolis. So those two things, once those work, now I can focus on building the brand and marketing and positioning. And so I pulled in a marketing person, and there's four of us. There was one when we started. 2 months later, there's four of us. And we were just four of us year one, just grinding and ops, making sure the product was coming up here, marketing, making sure the website was optimized and working properly, finance, make sure we had the money to do all this stuff. And I was just sort of game planning for the future. I was able to finance most of this. And then I brought in a majority of this. And I brought in some investors early to help me, pay for a lot of the molds. Like you said, it's very expensive building molds in every size. Design work's expensive. Websites are expensive. Trademark patents are expensive. Lawyers. So I understood it takes money to build these companies. So I brought some people in to help me finance that. And then as year one ends, you say, holy crap, we got something here. Let's go out and raise more money. And you just take it step by step and try to execute on the plan yearly.
John, as you're surrounded by a lot of high net worth individuals of athletes and so forth, and this obviously benefits them. Is this approach for you to, open this up to a lot more athletes saying, get involved in these companies today? As you start seeing with even the NIL today and the collegiate athletes, and then you have NBA players, NFL players, soccer players who want to be part of companies today that resonate with them, I should say, right? Rather than just investing in the S&P that's down today, they want to invest in interest in potentially a Kane. Is that an approach that you think is advantageous when building your company, is, raising capital from your potential customers as well?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to do it, especially when organically it's happening, when they come to you. And so we're at a point now where we're saying, okay, let's think about 5 years down the road? Who do we want involved in the brand? Who organically is wearing them and that wants to be involved? And so, yeah, I think it's great. We probably bring on some pro athletes in the next 12 months. And I think it's a great way to do it. And we're fortunate enough to have some people around us that have built billion-dollar businesses that could help steer me on some of the rollouts, whether we're going to roll out in retail, wholesale, with Dick's Sporting Goods, or, working with pro teams, how to work with them, or pro athletes. So I think to your point, bringing in people, athletes or musicians or whomever it might be to help scale the brand, it's a win-win when you can bring in someone with who's real and has a nice audience.
And John, you've done multiple companies thus far. You starting a company is not easy as well. Starting from here and building this out 4 years ago. What's one thing that shocked you the most in this journey compared to others?
Well, this was eye-opening. I didn't realize. I was talking to athletes in the beginning, but it's going into different areas. It's going to musicians. It's going to nurses. It's got I didn't realize how big. I don't want to say that, how big the market is. Like, not how wide it is. Where I was talking to just lacrosse athletes, or in my first company, I learned how to do everything with the bishops. We were talking in the pet food industry. Anyone who has pets. This is everyone who has feet. So not just in the, everyone has feet that are active. It's a ton of people. And then you got that internationally is another whole. So I didn't realize how big the opportunity was when we launched it, I would say. Like, I thought we were just talking NFL, NBA, NCAA athletes, runners, but it goes way beyond that. And now it goes down to kids. We launched kids today, kid sizes.
Let's talk about a little bit about the recyclable aspect that you've done as well. Having a mission-focused business simultaneously while growing, a large enterprise, it's not easy to always marry those two things together.
We choose 1% partner. We choose a partner in the 1% pool. So we've chosen two partners that are doing something running, active related that will help them. One is building trails around the U.S. So they use the money towards building more trails in certain areas, opening up trails. So we get to choose partners that are 1% partners, and we give them money so they could build their team out to help building their missions. Another one we're about 2 weeks, but it's usually something related to sport. We can't announce it yet, but it's a pretty big one. But we're helping them with their mission to help. A lot of times in our cases, we want to help people being active. So it's sports related issues.
How do you think, John, that, affects the total enterprise value of the business, right? As you've been surrounded by a lot of people who've built these large billion-dollar companies, I'm sure you have advisors on your team who've, helped you along this journey. But having a mission-oriented company always sometimes align with the bigger picture. What do you think the positives have came from that, partnering with these entities today?
I'd like to think it helps out. I think it helps out. I think it's us showing we're doing the right thing and producing these in the right places, and, trying to offset our carbon footprints. And I'm hoping it helps out. It does squeeze your margins a little bit, right? Like we're paying more, and we're trying to deliver a great product to the masses, a premium product at a price that most people can afford. I'd like to think, doing the right thing will get rewarded at some point. We feel great about it. We love doing what we do. And, but we'll see how it translates. I think doing the right thing is smart and the right way to do it. There's two ways to do it. We could have went the cheaper route and see, well, now we probably got hit with a lot more tariffs.
Yeah.
But I think doing the right thing, you'll get rewarded, in multiple ways. Like, we're starting to give money to charities now that feel good. It feels good. We're going to be involved in these charitable events that are not only good for the company, but it's good that we're helping out in these cool issues, whether it's water related, trail related. It's cool to be involved in these things and help out, just being a little part of helping out what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it helps the joy out of what you're doing as well, knowing that you are giving. And ultimately what I've found, and a lot of successful people have learned, is that the more you're able to go give throughout the journey you're doing, that's where you see the highest level of gratitude versus all the money that you're incurring while this endeavor is continuing. Right? I think what a lot of people get wrong about building a business or acquiring companies is they don't understand the trajectory of, having happiness along the way. What do you think
Yeah.
most people get wrong about balancing happiness and building a company at the same time?
I think enjoying the journey. You have to enjoy the journey, right? Like it's just tough. Building a business is one of the toughest things. It's 10, 15% of the companies really do well. Let's say survive. You have to enjoy the ride. You have to be doing what you love to do, right? Like if you're not loving what you're doing every day, it's just tough to do. I love doing this. I think when you become, sometimes you bring in investors, everything's about squeezing the most out of every product sold. And it's about, increasing your margins and being way more profitable. You could compromise the way you do things. And I think people, when they raise money, are probably under that pressure to do that. I match whatever we raise. So I'm fortunate enough to still make the calls and say, no, we're going to be a B Corp. We're going to choose sugarcane. Yes, it's twice as expensive, EVA, but we're going to make less money, but it's the right thing to do. And my investors all signed the B Corp. It's part of their LLC agreement. They go along with the decisions I make. And part of the B Corp is I make decisions based on not only what's best for the company, but potentially what's best for the environment. And that gives me the power to do that. So if I buy, these laces out of Brazil and they cost 3 cents more instead of somewhere else, Asia, and I could just save 2 cents on, I can make those decisions where I see if you raise a lot of money and they're sort of controlling your decisions. They just make those in Asia, save 2 cents there. But we try to do things the right way here. And I don't have people down my back saying, save a penny here, save 10 cents there.
I mean, it's a luxury that you're able to match dollar for dollar in equity of how much capital you raise.
Yeah.
And to control the board and still run the show over here. Now, I would challenge you this, John, if you were just getting out of your professional lacrosse years, I'm sure you accumulated some money there, but probably building businesses has paid you a lot higher dividend than playing lacrosse, as we all know that, a lot of high-paid lacrosse players here still don't make the amount of money that NBA and NFL players make, but you wanted to go start Kane all over again. Maybe you're 30 years old. You don't have a big checkbook to go write, but you have a passion for building a shoe today that is a recovery-based shoe that can help athletes. But you don't have all the money today to go do so. How would you do it today? Where would you start?
You could also work with agencies where you give them some small amount of equity to help you with the whole front end design development. Like you could give them some equity up on the front end for them to help you, whether it's a designer or an agency. I would say just get to the point where you have to prove the concept, where people like the product, as well as, whether it's designs or actually you have the actual physical product. But I was hustling. I didn't have much money when I started Maverick. I put in 30 grand. Like that was, I don't know if that, but I did that because I was working camps and I'd save all my money and I'd put it towards developing my equipment company. So I think you have to hustle. You got to build a little nest egg, right? You can't just go in with no money in the game because then you're not going to be able to attract investors because they're going to say, what do you lose if this doesn't go well? You lose nothing. So you have to I think you have to bring in skin. I won't invest in brands that the founders don't personally put money in. So I think having 10 grand, 15 grand to kick things off, and then maybe trading some sweat equity. And then you just got to get to a certain point where if it makes sense, people loving your designs, then you bring it to a 3D mold. Or if you like, whatever it might be, you just got to prove some aspect of it. People signing in or they're checking out the site, whatever it might be. Just get to that point where you can just take the next step. And you just got to take a step by step every couple of months until you have something solid where you can go out and raise some more money at a proper valuation where you're not getting, destroyed personally. The drill. It sounds like,
I know a thing or two about raising money and going around these ventures. So I know maybe I'm a little younger than you today, but it's not an easy journey, right? And I think a lot of people today don't want to get their hands dirty enough to get the proper MVP in place to then find investors and saying, look, I've done so much legwork here that a lot of these people just have a pitch deck and a dream. And they'd rather go that route and just try to raise all this VC money and get diluted like no other, versus really trying to go at the furthest length they can to see how far they can go on their own before they put their hand out. I think we live in a society today where putting your hand out is really easy because optionality is at its all-time highest. And you have a lot of people in venture capital, private equity who want to go invest in these companies today. But if you raise the wrong type of money, that could be massively detrimental to you in the future, right? So I think, what do you think one of the biggest mistakes you've made in business thus far that has shaped you to building Kane properly today?
Yeah. And just to go back on that, I would say, look, I mean, you have to hit the ground, hustle, prove I've seen a lot of decks where people just want to just raise a lot of money without proving anything. Very challenging on concepts, unless you've done it before and your last name's Zuckerberg or Musk. Like, it's very hard to do that. People want to see you hustle, get down, infiltrate work, do the groundwork, and then then you'll get proper money. Once you get money from VCs or private equity, they're going to take control of the board and they're going to be dictating. And that's why you can't make certain decisions in the future. So, in the past, mistakes, I had a tea company. So after I sold Maverick, I started investing in a bunch of brands, apparel brands, Legends, 10,000, beverages, snacks. And I got into Beverage. I love beverage. I love teas, and I got into a tea company, but I didn't fully understand the route to market aspect of it. You have a great product, whether it's tea or a new water bottle, whatever it might be, but you got to understand the whole playbook beyond D2C. And this was a product, teas, where it's a very heavy product where it's tough to ship. It's tough to, so now you're dealing, it's very challenging. So now you have to build it on the infantry level, which we did a good job. We were in Wegmans and Whole Foods and everything, but very cap intensive also, ton of money. So not understanding, I built a whole model after that saying, is it Amazon friendly? Check. Is it ship or lightweight? Check. Is the price point in these, what I mean? I just saw where you have to live to scale. And I just think, getting into certain industries where you don't fully understand the route to market was probably where I learned the most. And where certain markets, you just understand it's a deep dive before you come above water. And the route to market's very different. It's a 2-tier distribution route. It's crazy. So it taught me to build a product that was direct to consumer friendly, lightweight, not huge in size where it's easy to ship. And this thing checked all the boxes. And, so Kane checked all the boxes, and I knew. And then I did the design work. People loved it. But you almost have to reverse engineer some of the stuff now in creating a product.
Yeah. Having an investor scorecard is what I call it on all the things I look for. And I rate them from 1 to 5, and it has to pass a certain threshold in order for me to invest in it or start the business. Is probably the best thing I've ever done in my entire career, because I have a framework of knowing what your non-negotiables are, right? Oftentimes, I think people want their desires, but they don't understand what they don't want enough. And if you framework what you don't want, because those are very specific. And when you know what the very specific non-negotiables are, you're able to pass on the desires that you really think you have, because there's so many desires we have in life.
Yeah.
What I found is, I had the founder of Art of Tea here on the podcast, because there's a very well-known tea company. They're probably one of the highest quality teas out there in the world today. And
which one is it?
The Art of Tea by Steve.
Oh yeah, Art of Tea. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in New York, I believe.
Yep, exactly. He was here on the pod not too long ago, and we talked about his business. And what I loved about what he said the most, he's like, people today don't put enough emphasis on the product itself because they can just go out market people. You see all these marketing agencies today running paid ads, paid media all over. You can have a subpar product and be a great marketer and still get it through. But what he focused on was the highest quality product. He obviously he still did well on the D2C side, but the most powerful thing that I learned about D2C today is the art of a referral and having people talk about your product is the highest leverage and LTV you'll ever get in your business today. And I think what you've done here at Kane has shown that, hey, you really focus dramatically on the product itself to be second to none. What are your thoughts on people today of not focusing enough on product and just saying, we can go build a 6 out of 10 product, will be 10 out of 10 marketers today?
Yeah. You see that, especially in like food and beverage, where people know they could just pop it on Amazon or get it because they have connections into Costco or Target, and they just launch these brands that look a lot better or healthier, but they're actually, if you read the ingredients, they're not, and they're just slightly better. But I think that, I think everything comes down to product, because I think eventually everyone's going to dig into your product, and your product is king, right? So, you have to make sure you have a great product, and then you go tell the great story. But you can't just tell a great story, because eventually, eventually people are going to start looking at the product. I think you're right. I mean, you got to have the product and the story and the marketing. You can't just have, the great storytelling and great marketing.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that there's a massive array of brands out there who do this today. And just because the marketplace has never been easier for the marketplace, but it's never been harder to scale, right? I think Amazon has somewhat destroyed that for the marketplace, having everyone the ability to start an online business today. And I actually read a stat from the CEO of Shopify that one out of four people at the age of 24 under are starting a business today and pursuing entrepreneurship rather than trying to, pursue an MBA, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurship is readily available today. If I was a young entrepreneur wanting to get in the shoe business today, what do you think is some of the biggest challenges that many people are not aware of that you've learned while building Kane?
I think building a shoe properly takes experience, like bringing in the right people, the developers, designers. You got to make sure it's from ground zero, it's properly done. Finding a manufacturer is not easy. People don't want to work with startups in any industry, because your production levels are very low. So, finding a good manufacturer is very challenging. What else? You have to have, positioning is very important. But I mean, I think all these things are doable, but you can't, to your point, skip a step and not get the product right, because eventually they'll catch up to you. I think everything's doable. You just got to work your butt off. I work 6 days a week. I do events on weekends. I love it though. I work at night, put my kids to bed, 9 to 10:30. I'm doing work. If you love what you're doing, it goes back to it. You'll enjoy it. You'll go and then do it. If you're like selling something you don't like, it's going to be very tough, and then you have a job and you're playing for the paycheck. So that's why I tell people, like, get into industries they love. And, I talk at schools too now. I was at Harvard last year, talked to the lacrosse team, Johns Hopkins, all these colleges. What I tell them is, if you had a bunch of money in a bank account over there, what would you do? Like, what would you do? If you don't need money anymore, what would you do? And a lot of these kids want to, I'd get into coaching. I love coaching and being around young athletes and stuff like that. So that's what you should be doing. I would start my own restaurant. I love food. I'd love to. That's what you should be doing. And so I think, instead of chasing the dough, which not everyone, a lot of people do, try to figure out what you love to do and figure out what you love to do. And then you can make money doing anything. You can make money running camps. You can make money having successful restaurants. And you're going to want to do it and grow it, but don't just chase the dough, is what I tell these guys. Do what you love to do. That's when you can be excellent. You can make money doing anything these days. And But yeah, it's hard work too. It's not, starting these companies is a grind. You got to bust your ass. Everyone, look at he did. Look at this guy did. Like they're working their ass off. This is not a 9 to 5 job. You gotta grind. And sometimes it's 9 to 5, and then it's 9 o'clock to 10:30, and then it's an event on a weekend, and you got to show the people around you you're working. So it raises their level as well.
John, to touch on that, there's a lot of people who talk about, follow your passion, but then there's other people who say that's a dichotomy and saying, follow your skill set and dive into an opportunity that matches your skill set. Because I think in life, we're trying to align two things: the highest skill set with the highest opportunity, marry those two together, and you'll create a successful outcome, right? Oftentimes people are chasing the outcome, which is the doubt, right? They want, their first 30K a month, 50K a month, the 100K a month, whatever it may be. And that's what they're chasing towards rather than opportunity in the skill set itself. How do you bifurcate the two of knowing that if you see a window of opportunity and maybe it's not your true passion today, how do you balance whether to chase that opportunity, let go of your passion, whether you're an athlete and like, hey, I want to play ball and I want to be a baller and I want to go play in the NBA, but it's still not happening. But there's an opportunity in front of you of someone saying, hey, let me take you to this journey as well. It may not be basketball today. It could be basketball adjacent. It could be in the trade. But now you have to go, you have a fork in the road. You have to go pick a decision on where you want to go. I don't know if you've ever been in that position in life. How would you go about that?
I think that's a good thing. So you have to actually take, most cases, I would say, where you're really good at, take that road, and you should have a side hustle. And your side hustle is your passion, but you need to make money to make all this happen. And so on weekends, nights, you're working on your hustle, and your hustle is like what your dream is. But if you're really good at, hockey, whatever, and you're playing it, riding it out, you're getting paid while you're building your side hustle. I think that's a very good plan. That's what I tell people to do. Like whether you're working on Wall Street and you hate it, okay, then work on your side hustle at nights and on weekends. Try to build that up, your passion, so you can transition over there.
Do you feel like side hustles are distractions to your main hustles?
I don't. If you do them, I think you do them right. I think you do them right. You just gotta separate. You gotta move away from your hustle, your main thing, and go operate in a different place. I don't do it in the same. If I do work on something else, I just go do it in a different place. My mindset changes, and I don't have any side hustles right now. But like when I was working, I worked at Solomon Smith Barney back in the day. I had a side hustle. I was doing camps on weekends, which financed, Maverick. I did other things to that I enjoy doing. And but I don't think if you are all in, once you have your all in thing, then I wouldn't say have a side hustle, because the side hustle takes away from your all in thing. You know that you're going to pivot at some point, have a side hustle, and start planning, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months out.
John, I want to ask you something a little more philosophical that, we talk a lot about business in this podcast, but the same token too, it's good to get into the minds of these entrepreneurs. You've been in New York for a long time in the hustle and grind, and you've seen a lot change probably in the last 20 years of you building business. What's something that you believe now that you thought was probably insane, 10 years ago?
I hate to admit it, but, some people working from home a day or two a week, I used to not be a fan of that. People working from where remotely, like now that we're in Connecticut, we're like an hour north of New York, and a lot of our talent's in New York, a lot of talent here, but so people work 3 days here, 2 days there, and it's actually working. I wasn't so into that, but when I grew up, like when I worked at Solomon Smith Barney, we were there 6:45 in the morning till 5:15, and there's no work from home. There was nothing like that, and so I thought that's a big change. I think COVID affected a lot of that. If you have mature people who could work from different locations, that's something I didn't think. But we have people now in different parts of the country that are being very effective. That's probably the biggest thing that pops up that I see.
John, how would you explain the younger generation today, guys in their 20s today, compared to when you were in your 20s? Laugh says it all.
I think it's different. I think I don't know. I think a lot of the younger people see the planes and this and that on social media, and they want to jump over there fast. And they're building, a lot more people are building their own brands. That's a priority. They're building the brand they're working for. I think we hire a lot of athletes here. I think the athletes are very similar. They're used to grinding. They understand chain of command and like, okay, he's the head coach, he's the boss. They understand he's the defensive coach. I listen to him. And so I think you get a mixture of both. I think the younger generation wants more freedom. And I just wasn't used to that. We were like grinding in office, in person, spontaneous. Let's try this, let's try that. Like that's where a lot of that comes from. So now we're loosening up a little bit. I think we're going 4 days a week in office. It, to me, was just a fight that went on for a while.
I can only imagine. The reason why I asked that is you see this in the workplace where people do want this optionality of work from home. They say the worst employee in the world is a California remote employee, right? You're just working in the sunshine remotely, probably having 2 other jobs at the same time. But I also see this, and this might shock you, is I see in athletes today. I think athletes today are inherently worse than athletes back in the 90s. What's the rationale behind this? Is that it's actually a lot easier to have different sources of income than what MJ had and even what we had back in the day. Because I can get a shoe brand from you right now, John. You can pay me $1 million shoe brand today, and then I got this social media deal coming my way too, where I make this one post, I make half a meg. All these things are coming these athletes' way, saying, do I need to wake up at 4 a.m. and grind anymore? Right? Do I need to get a Saturday session? Or do I need to wear the Kane footwear and go cold plunge and ice bath and sauna that same day? Things are good. Bank account's pretty healthy. Versus, when you're focused on the grind, the end world, they don't exist anymore if you think about it in the league. And I'm seeing that in soccer. I'm seeing that in football. I'm seeing that in basketball, baseball. It's just because optionality makes it easier.
If you watch UFC, the fighters that make a lot of money, they just don't have the drive anymore. Conor McGregor, these guys, they just don't, they're not as hungry anymore. They have the boat, this, that. Yeah, I definitely think that pro level, they're making money, so much money now where, a lot of them, I do see the hockey guys though, they still grind, in my opinion. The hockey, because it's like you're on that ice, you can get killed. So you better be, but I do see it in some of the other sports, especially I think basketball, to be honest. You see, they're getting paid $12 million to sit at the end of the bench, and they don't need this deal. They don't need that. And they're flying around, on the team plane all the time. It's, I just see that. I see that. I'm dealing with the athletes in lacrosse and, women's soccer who aren't going to be pro athletes who know that they have to prepare for the next stage of their life. And I've seen a lot of grind in them still, and hopefully that remains the same.
Yeah. It's a very unique observation I just put together. So when I hire people, I hire the skinny and poor, not the fat and rich, right? And that's how you can get a hard worker on your team.
Yeah, right.
John, as we're wrapping this podcast, there's a few questions I like to always ask.
Definitely.
It's a rapid fire. Spitball me and let's have at it, right?
Yeah.
If you can go back to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself today?
A couple of things. One, obviously when we were younger, we put a lot of pressure academically. And I still see it happening today on these young people. I would probably, knowing that you don't need to go to the top schools anymore, I would probably say take some academic pressure off yourself and your kids. And you don't necessarily need to go to the Ivy League school anymore and all this stuff. I would probably say take some of that academic pressure off. Back then we didn't know how to eat properly. I was eating pizza 5 days ago. I was D1 athlete and I just didn't eat properly. And now I have trainers and I see what goes on. I've been on top like locker rooms, and if these guys eat meticulously, I wish I had a better understanding of being a 365 athlete, sleep, recovery. I learned that later in life when I was in like my 30s, and I was fortunate enough to play on the U.S. team like 32 years old because I was starting to eat right, train right, recover properly. It's something I didn't have when I was 18 years old.
John, what question do you wish people ask you more often?
I guess what motivates you? You know, I think, I think, I've had a big victory with Maverick. I was fortunate enough to have some financial freedoms there, you know, live where I can now pick and choose my opportunities. And so now why am I doing all this? Why am I grinding so hard? Why am I doing this? It's about, you know, it's about self-fulfillment. It's about winning again. It's about building another team. It's not necessarily about making a ton of dough. It's about proving you could do it again. You know what I mean? It's stuff like, so I don't know. That's something I think about. You launch these things. Of course you want to make money, but it's a lot more than just making money.
Money is not an issue. What company are you buying today?
Jeez.
Make you think.
Probably something like Starlink, something like that. I mean, if I wanted to make a lot of money, yeah, I like brands like that. I like the Four Season brands. I think they do a great job with their hotels, just so I could just go hit all the different Four Seasons around the world. Probably something like that. Yeah,
That's smart.
it's a brand I love. Yeah,
It's highly profitable, and you can actually use tangible and you can use, right?
yeah, exactly.
Who's the best person in business you've interacted with and why?
I worked with some really good people. Billy Bishop, one of my good friends. Him and his father and his brother started Blue Buffalo Pet Foods. They sold it to General Mills for a huge amount of money, multi-billions. But they understand the grind. They understand the obstacles I have. They understand production. They understand marketing. They understand positioning. I learned a ton working with them, and I could lean on them. They're my biggest investors as well. So I could lean on them because they've been through the wars, and they're very smart people. They can see, I tell people they can see around corners. They're telling me stuff that's going to happen before it even happens, and so I could prepare. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Very smart people.
John, where do you see yourself and Kane in the next 5 years?
We're just going to keep building it, building the team. We just moved to a new office here, having fun, expanding into new categories outside of sports. So just building new product. We have another product coming out early next year. Just, expanding on our line, expanding on our team, just growing it, heads down, hitting more events, and just see where you are in 5 years.
I love that, John. And where can people find more about you and Kane today?
You can follow us at Kane Footwear on Instagram. I recommend you guys do that. We have pretty cool social media team and post every day. Mom John _Gags. I have an account on Instagram as well. But yeah, we're up in Connecticut. We're in New York. We're at all these events. We're at the Miami Marathon, Austin Marathon, Chicago, New York. Come see us at one of these marathons, Houston, Charleston last week. But you can find us, email us, call us. We're at Dick's Sporting Goods. We're at Shields in the Midwest, Nordstrom's. You can find us on the shelves, a bunch of independents all over the country. Tell your store in your town that you want to carry Kane, But you can find us anywhere.
John, you've been a pleasure to have on. I think Kane's an awesome company, and that's the pod. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.